There Crafty Doer, Jessica Michaels here, welcoming you back for this month's little series I'm calling Mixed Media March Madness. For this week's project, I created a trio of cards using media and a lot of stencils. But before we get into it, don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more content like this and hit the notification bell so you don't miss more content like this. Here's how I went. I was approached by BLEDS, which is a scrapbooking crafts and supplies store on Amazon. And they asked if I could create with this beautiful paper pad. They actually gave me a choice to choose amongst, I think they had like over 30 paper pads. And I went with this one because I had a technique in mind, which was using my stencils. I was happy to create with their product. This one is called Honey Flower. It is a 6x6 paper pad by Panalisa. It is like a mid-weight kind of paper, but it held up very well to all the media that I used. To begin this card, I chose this really pretty gray background and a little bit of purple and white daisies on it. I love the purple and I want to make it stand out. So if you take a peek over to the left of my screen, you can see some die cuts, some floral die cuts. They're Tim Holtz. Way before this stenciling, I created these by creating a background and I did some splattering and all kinds of cool stuff. And then in the end, I actually don't end up using them. But that's okay. I could use that for another project. And so I stuck to the original plan, which was stenciling. And I actually got my hands on this set of stencils recently for another project, but I couldn't wait to use it. So it is by Vicky Boutin, the Discover and Create. It's been out for a little bit. But I go ahead and use the first one and I applied some Distress Oxide to it. And I love it. It's like a little peak of the stencil. And now I'm using the second set of stencils, which is these polka dots, the bigger ones and the smaller ones with my Distress texture paste. I've used this in the other media projects for this series. And what I found out in this project by accidentally overheating it is it puffs up. So I didn't experiment too much with that, but note to self for the next project. So after I get my stenciling done, of course, we're going to do a little bit of ink smooshing. And on my glass working surface is the leftover ink from the floral die cuts over on my left. So I spritz that down and then start picking it up with a scrap piece of plastic packaging. And I start smooshing down the ink a little bit. The paper took a second to soak it up. Not what I'm used to, but it still worked. And I end up really loving it. And so just remember always, you will always hear me tell you, dry in between layers when you are working with mixed media. What I'm going to do here is add some Distress glaze to seal all the beautiful work that I've created so that when I splatter some of Dina Wakley's gloss spray, it's not going to turn purple. It's going to stay white and vibrant, which is what I want. And I've mentioned before about this Distress glaze. A little tip that I actually picked up from Tiffany Solorio over on her channel is that not only does it seal your project, but it also adds a little bit of glaze. It just gives it a little oomph and makes it a little bit more vibrant. The camera may not pick that up. In my last project, I'll show you, you can kind of tell a little bit, but if you use it in person, you can 100 times tell the difference. So next I'll distress at the edges. Like I said, this paper is holding up very well to all of the technique and all of the media that I end up using. Just like distressing the edges with my X-Acto knife. I'll have the link down below to the paper pad and go check it out. So I add a little bit of stitching with my sewing machine, just a very subtle white loopy zigzags around the edges. And I decided that I still want to use those floral dies, but I go ahead and just recut them in plain white. I think that if I would have used the other ones, it was just blending in to the card, and I wanted not only the beautiful work that we did on the card, but the floral print as well as these plain white floral bits to stand out. So I end up curling up the tip of the floral bits just a little bit and only adhering halfway up so that it can kind of pop off the page. And I grab my distress color pencils and I add a little bit of fossilized amber and spiced marmalade in the center of the flower. Now I probably could have blended some ink on there or even just colored it in with a marker, but I find that the distress color pencils add texture to it. And so if you look really closely, and actually off camera, I end up using a little bit of antique linen just to darken it up a little bit to match the daisies that are on the floral print paper. But anyways, it adds texture to it. And I find that just a little bit more pleasing to the eye, especially when I'm creating this card just full of mixed media. So another layer of dimension, another layer of texture, and makes my heart happy. So I grab my A2 liner and I adhere that to my A2 card. I add some foam here to give it a little bit of a lift and to make it really pop. And I love how it ends up looking. So to finish off the card, I use the little bow in Tim Holtz Thinlits from his vault, the funky floral. And then I put it all together. The sentiment actually I created in my Cricut, and at the end of it, I end up creating 2 cards. By the 3rd card, I redo all of the sentiments in the same font in Cricut, just so they're all more cohesive since it is a trio, but there you have it. So for my 2nd card, I choose this beautiful floral, very spring floral background. And I'm going to try to learn from my mistakes from the 1st card. So right away, I grab my stencil, since that is the idea behind this video. And I don't know if you were able to tell, but there is a subtle like off green, off blue under the rose there. And I wanted to highlight that color in this card. So I pick up the Salvage Patina and the other 2 shades of blue to try to help bring that out. So I start stenciling it. And I'm going to be very honest with you here and take you through my process of this card. I was losing my mind. I was about to trash this card, and you can kind of see me fiddle with my fingers sometimes and just kind of think a little bit because I wanted to make this card work. The pattern paper is so pretty, and I loved how the first one turned out, and I thought I could either A, recreate it, or B, let's just keep on going and see what happens. So I start doing some ink smooshing, and what happened is I over diluted the oxide on my glass working surface. And so then I just really just had like a big old smush. I wasn't very happy. And the second thing that I did was I did not dry in between my layers. That I said it. That's it. I didn't take my own advice that I'm always preaching at you guys about. And the reason is because I was starting to get a bit frustrated. And maybe not frustrated. I think I was just getting a little eager. I was eager to make this work. And so I was kind of jumping ahead of myself. So I thought, let's just keep moving. And I grabbed my texture paste and use the circles stencils. And okay, it's, something's happening, but I'm not happy. And I try using this green distress oxide. It's a little too bright. I spritz some spray stain, peeled paint spray stain, and I use the Tim Holtz hexagon stencil, and I use my finger because at this point I don't even want to reach for a brush or, anything. And I'm not 100% happy yet. So after giving it a little bit more thought, I thought, okay, well, splattering usually works, right? So I go and I do that, except that I feel like it's a little too dark. So I pick it up with my cloth and you can barely see it. But at the end of it, it's another layer, to be honest. It's another layer of mixed media. And I kept trying to remind myself that through this process. It's just keep going until you're happy. However, don't forget to dry in between layers. And that's what I end up doing towards the rest of this project. So I grabbed some fossilized amber spray stain and I spritzed that a little bit. And that gave me the idea because you can see how there's like gold, that yellow gold there. And I thought, bingo, I'll grab my stencil butter. So I do that. And I really did like using this hexagon stencil. So I'm going to go ahead and go for it. There's a few bees popping in and out of the pattern paper. And because we put medium on it, they're subtle now. Once I laid that stencil butter down, I was in love. I loved it. I was like, okay, here we go. So I let that dry and then I grab my white gloss spray and do my thing, do some splattering, and it is becoming just more and more beautiful to me after all of that hardship. But it just goes to show you, just keep going until you're happy. But don't forget to dry between layers. So I go in so that the cards can be cohesive. I distress the edges and I add some black stitching with my sewing machine. There you go. And I love it. It's my favorite one out of the 3. So for the third and final card, I really learned my lesson. But not only that, I wanted to keep it a bit more simple. I wanted to keep it a bit more simple so that if you are new to mixed media and stencils and stenciling, this is more up your alley in my style. And so we're just going to grab some Distress Oxide and blend that stencil. I'm going to go up and down the center of this piece. And then I'm going to do a little bit of ink smooshing. Now, here's a little trick. Well, not trick, but I guess like tip from my experience to yours is I pick these 2 Distress Oxide colors and I feel like they're not really popping out. And it might be because of the black background. And the other 2 were a little bit lighter. So that's why I grabbed the this Distress ink in the picket fence. And the white didn't really pop out much, but this is what I figured out is that it made the blue a little bit lighter. And so that helped. So after drying that layer, I grabbed Prized Ribbon, which is one of my favorite colors in the Distress line. And look at that. It pops right off of the lighter blue that we created with the picket fence. I'm loving it. And so I just kind of ink smoosh up and down the center and then off to the side a little bit. And I grab my Vicky Boutin circle stencils and we want to keep it cohesive with the other 2. And so I do some stenciling with the texture paste up and down on top of the beautiful mixed media work that we did with the Distress ink. So I'm happy because I feel like I'm not struggling as much with this card as I did the other ones. But I'm so happy that I get excited and I don't dry in between the stenciling layer. So I get a little bit of smooshing, but that's okay. I think it just adds a little bit to the texture, the type of texture. But once it's all dried up, and this is where I figured out that if you overheat Distress Texture Paste, it puffs up. But I'm going to grab some Distress Glaze and seal all of this so that I can splatter with white gloss spray. So here you can tell the top part's a little bit darker than the bottom. And that's what I mean by it. The Distress Glaze gives it a bit of a pop. It makes it more vibrant. And And finally, I distress the edges again to make all of the cards a bit cohesive. I run it through my sewing machine for a bit of subtle white stitching up and down the center. And I adhere this to these beautiful blue cardstock that I have in my stash, as I did the other two. I put some foam tape on the back to help it pop off the card base. And similar to the other two, I cut a strip off of that same colored cardstock, and I add my scent here. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you're following along my Mixed Media March Madness, learning how easily you can add mix media to your projects. Let me know in the comment section below if you have any mediums or techniques you would like to see me create with. As usual, the supply list for the products I used in this project are in the description box below. Don't forget to check out BLEDS, the scrapbooking and craft supplies store on Amazon. And remember, you create because you were fearfully and wonderfully created. And don't you forget that you belong, even if paper crafting isn't your thing.